Michelle Gray stood frozen at her kitchen counter, fingers hovering over the screen of her husband's phone. The notification that had flashed moments ago was now gone, but she had seen enough. A message beginning with "Can't wait to see you again," from someone named Tennis Pro. Drew never mentioned taking tennis lessons. 3 seconds of seeing that preview was all it took for the floor beneath her carefully constructed life to crack. She set the phone down exactly as she had found it, face down on the granite countertop. This wasn't the first warning sign. For the past 2 months, Drew had been showering immediately after coming home, something he'd never done before in their 11 years of marriage. His excuses about the gym rang hollow. The same gym he'd complained about for years suddenly became a daily necessity. And then there were the late-night texts, the passwords changed on his accounts, the way he angled his phone away when she entered a room. Through the window, Michelle could see her flower shop across the street. Gray's Blooms, with its cheerful yellow awning. She had built it from nothing into the most respected floral business in the area. Clients trusted her to mark their most meaningful moments, births, anniversaries, even final goodbyes at funerals. She understood the language of relationships through flowers. How ironic that she couldn't decipher what was happening in her own marriage. "Hey, did I leave my phone down here?" Drew's voice startled her as he entered the kitchen, his hair still damp from the shower he'd taken the moment he'd walked in the door. At 40, he still had the same boyish good looks that had caught her eye in college. Tall with dark hair now flecked with distinguished silver at the temples, and green eyes that used to look at her with undisguised adoration. "Right here," Michelle replied, sliding it toward him while keeping her expression neutral. "Dinner will be ready in 20 minutes. Actually, I need to go back to the office tonight. End of quarter reports." He pocketed the phone quickly. "Don't wait up. End of quarter reports. In the middle of the month." The lies were becoming less convincing, as if he wasn't even trying anymore. Michelle nodded anyway, the practiced smile never reaching her eyes. Drive safely. After the front door closed, he stood alone in their large, silent kitchen. The house they had saved for years to buy suddenly felt hollow. On the refrigerator, a photo of them from last year's anniversary trip to Hawaii showed 2 people with their arms wrapped around each other, genuinely happy. When had that changed? Had she been too consumed with her business to notice the distance growing between them? "Enough," Michelle whispered to herself. She wouldn't cry. Not yet. First, she needed facts. The next morning, Michelle opened her shop at 7 as usual, greeted her 2 employees, and began preparing arrangements for a wedding consultation. But her mind was elsewhere. By 10 o'clock, she had made her decision. During her lunch break, she drove to a small office building on the edge of town and parked her car emblazoned with the Gray's Blooms logo several blocks away. Liam Blackwell's office was exactly what she expected from her college friend. Minimalist, efficient, with degrees and licenses framed on one wall, and a single potted plant she had given him when he opened his private investigation business 3 years ago. It was still alive, which surprised her. "Michelle," he said, rising from behind his desk, "your message was cryptic. Everything okay?" He hadn't seen Liam in nearly a year, though they occasionally exchanged holiday cards and birthday wishes. He looked older than 40, his face more lined than she remembered, eyes that had seen too much of human nature at its worst. "I need your help, Liam." Michelle sat down, clutching her purse in her lap. "It's Drew. I think..." The words caught in her throat. Saying it aloud would make it real. Liam's expression softened. He had been through this conversation hundreds of times with other clients. "You think he's having an affair?" It wasn't a question, but Michelle nodded anyway. "Tell me why." His tone shifted to professional. For the next 20 minutes, Michelle outlined everything. The behavioral changes, the suspicious texts, the evening work commitments that never happened before, how he'd become obsessed with his appearance, buying new clothes and cologne. Liam took notes, asking clarifying questions without judgment. When she finished, he He set his pen down and looked directly at her. "I need to ask you something, and I want an honest answer." His voice was gentle, but serious. "If he is involved with someone else, do you really want to know? Some people come to me thinking they want proof, but the reality is much harder to handle than the suspicion." Michelle hesitated, her hand instinctively touching the wedding band on her finger. "I've been asking myself that since I saw the message. Part of me hopes I'm wrong and feels terrible for even suspecting him." She took a deep breath. "But I need to know. Whatever it is, I need to face it." Liam nodded. "My standard package includes 3 weeks of surveillance, digital monitoring, and background research. I'll document everything with photos, times, locations. I won't interfere or make contact with anyone involved. I'll simply observe and report back to you." "And the cost?" Michelle asked, though money wasn't her primary concern. He slid a contract across the desk, pointing to the figure at the bottom. It was substantial, but not beyond her means. She had her own savings account, money from the flower shop that Drew knew nothing about. "When can you start?" "Today. I'll need some information. His schedule, vehicle details, access to any shared accounts if possible." Michelle opened her phone and began forwarding what he needed. As she did, Liam studied his old friend. He remembered the vibrant, laughing woman from college who had been so excited to introduce everyone to Drew. They had seemed perfect together. "You know," Liam said carefully, "sometimes there are explanations that aren't what we fear. Don't jump to conclusions until we have solid evidence." Michelle appreciated the attempt at comfort, but she had already jumped. The only question now was how hard the landing would be. That night, she lay awake beside Drew, listening to his even breathing. Was he really asleep, or pretending, the way she was? His phone buzzed on the nightstand. Once, twice. He didn't stir. Michelle stared at the ceiling, counting the hours until morning, when Liam would begin tracking the movements of the man sleeping next to her, a stranger wearing her husband's face. 3 days later, Drew mentioned offhandedly that he had a work dinner that evening. Michelle smiled and kissed him goodbye, telling him to have a good time. The moment his car pulled away, she texted Liam. He just left, said it was a work dinner. Liam's response came immediately. On it, Michelle tried to distract herself by working late at the shop, arranging flowers for tomorrow's deliveries, but her hands shook too much to create anything beautiful. By 9 that evening, her phone rang. "You should come to my office," Liam said, his voice carefully neutral. "Now?" Her heart hammered. "Did you find something?" "Just come, Michelle." 20 minutes later, she sat across from Liam as he turned his computer monitor toward her. On the screen was a photo of Drew entering an upscale restaurant, holding the door open. The timestamp showed 7:13 p.m. "This is from tonight," Liam explained. Michelle leaned forward. Who was he meeting? Liam clicked to the next photo. A striking woman with auburn hair entered the restaurant, Drew's hand lightly touching the small of her back. She wore tennis whites, partially covered by an expensive-looking jacket. Her name is Natasha Lockhart. She's an instructor at the Oakwood Country Club. The tennis pro. Michelle's stomach clenched. "Keep going," she whispered. More photos followed. Drew and Natasha at a corner table, laughing, hands touching across the white tablecloth. Then leaving together 2 hours later, walking to a luxury apartment building 6 blocks away. The final photo showed them in the lobby, Drew's arm around her waist as they waited for the elevator. "He's still there," Liam said quietly. "I have someone watching the building." Michelle stared at the images, her vision blurring. It was simultaneously exactly what she had expected, and completely unbelievable. "There's more," Liam said, his expression troubled. "Something unexpected came up during my research into Ms. Lockhart." Michelle looked up from the photos, wiping a tear from her cheek. "What?" Liam opened another folder on his computer. "While conducting surveillance at the country club, I noticed a pattern. Drew isn't the only married man she's seeing." Michelle stared at Liam, trying to process his words through the fog of her own pain. "What do you mean? Not the only one?" At first, I was just focusing on Drew's schedule, but I noticed something during my surveillance at the tennis club. Liam clicked through several new photos on his computer. Natasha Lockhart gives private lessons to at least 8 different men, all wearing wedding rings, all following the same pattern. The images showed Natasha with different men, laughing, touching their arms during lessons, checking her watch as they disappeared into the club's private lounge area. Some were older, some younger, but all had the same captivated expression when looking at her. "She has a system," Liam continued, his investigator's detachment firmly in place. "She targets successful married men, primarily those who are new members or rarely visit the club. She offers them special private lessons, gradually escalating from innocent coaching to flirtation to—" He trailed off, glancing at Michelle. "To affairs," she finished flatly. "Yes, based on what I've observed, she maintains relationships with multiple men simultaneously, carefully scheduling them to avoid overlap. She's extremely methodical." Michelle stood up abruptly, walking to the window of Liam's office. Outside, the city continued as normal. Cars passing, people walking dogs, a couple holding hands as they window shopped. How strange that her world could collapse while everything else remained intact. "Why?" she asked, her voice barely audible. "Why target married men specifically?" Liam hesitated. "I've seen this before. For some, it's about the challenge, the thrill of taking something that belongs to someone else. For others, it's practical. Married men are less likely to expect commitment and often have more disposable income. They're low-risk targets." Michelle turned back to him. "And what about their wives? Does she think about what she's doing to them? To us?" Her voice cracked on the last word, the first acknowledgement that she was now one of those betrayed women. "I don't know," Liam said honestly. "But, Michelle, there's something else you should see." He pulled up a document on his screen. "This is Natasha Lockhart's employment record. She's worked at 6 different country clubs in the past 4 years, never staying longer than 8 months. I made some discreet inquiries. She leaves when things get complicated, when wives start asking questions, or the men become too attached. Then she moves on to a new club, new victims." Michelle returned to her seat, her shock giving way to a cold clarity. "She's a predator, an efficient one," Liam agreed. "She'll probably move on from Oakwood soon, given what I've uncovered, but she'll just start over somewhere else." Michelle stared at the photo of Drew and Natasha laughing together at the restaurant, the same laugh he used to share with her. "Who are the other men? Do their wives know?" "I've identified 5 so far," Liam said, pulling up a list. 2 executives, a surgeon, a real estate developer, and a retired investment banker. All married, all members of Oakwood. And no, I don't believe their wives know. Yet. The word yet hung in the air between them. Michelle's phone buzzed with a text. "Drew, meeting running late. Don't wait up." She showed it to Liam, who checked his watch. It's been 3 hours since they entered her building. A wave of nausea washed over Michelle. All those nights he came home late, claiming to work on end-of-quarter reports. All those showers immediately after arriving home. The casual mentions of a new hobby she had never questioned. Tennis lessons, how convenient. "What do I do now?" she asked, more to herself than to Liam. "That depends on what you want, Michelle. Some clients confront their spouses immediately. Others gather more evidence. Some file for divorce without ever mentioning what they've discovered." Liam's voice softened. "What do you need?" Michelle closed her eyes, trying to center herself. What did she need? The answer came with surprising clarity. "I need time," she said finally. "I can't make any decisions tonight. But there's something else I need to know. Those other women, the other wives. Do we know who they are?" Liam nodded. "I can find out. But why?" "Because they deserve to know what I know now." Michelle's voice was steady, despite the tears streaking her face. "And because I'm not going to let her just move on to the next club and do this again." The next morning, Michelle opened her shop as usual, greeted her employees, and arranged flowers with mechanical precision. No one could tell that she had barely slept, that her entire reality had shifted. She smiled at customers, discussed wedding centerpieces, calculated costs for funeral arrangements, all while part of her observed from a distance, marveling at her own ability to function. Drew had come home at midnight, slipping into bed beside her, smelling of soap and that new cologne. She had pretended to be asleep, fighting the urge to scream, to hit him, to demand answers. Instead, she had maintained her steady breathing, gathering her strength for what was to come. At noon, she locked the shop for her lunch break and drove to a small cafe 3 towns over, where no one would recognize her. There, she met with Colleen Lynch, the wife of the retired investment banker on Liam's list. Colleen was elegant, her silver hair styled perfectly, her outfit expensive but understated. At 58, she carried herself with the quiet confidence of a woman who had built a life around being the perfect partner to a successful man. She looked nothing like what Michelle had expected, not fragile or naive, but composed and intelligent. "Thank you for meeting me," Michelle said after they ordered. "I know this must seem strange. Your friend was quite persuasive," Colleen replied, referring to Liam, who had made the initial contact. "He said it was a matter of some urgency concerning my husband." Michelle took a deep breath. "Mrs. Lynch, Colleen, please." "Colleen, what I'm about to tell you is difficult, and I'm sorry to be the one to share it." Michelle opened a folder and slid a photograph across the table. Colleen's husband with Natasha, entering the same apartment building where Drew had gone. Colleen stared at the photo, her expression unchanging. Then she reached into her purse, removed her reading glasses, put them on, and studied the image more carefully. Finally, she looked up at Michelle. "I see." Her voice was remarkably steady. "And you're showing me this because?" "Because my husband is involved with the same woman," Michelle explained. "And so are several other married men from Oakwood. She's done this before, at other clubs." Colleen removed her glasses, folding them precisely. "How long have you known about your husband?" 3 days. 3 days, Colleen repeated. "I've known about Richard's indiscretions for 23 years. Michelle blinked in surprise. "You knew?" "Of course I knew. There was a tennis instructor before this one, and a yoga teacher before that, and a personal shopper before that." Colleen sipped her water. "What exactly do you want from me, Michelle?" The question caught her off guard. What did she want? Solidarity? Advice? A partner in revenge? I thought you deserved to know. And now I do. What's next in your plan?" Michelle hadn't expected this reaction. No tears, no shock, just practical questions. "I want to stop her. Natasha Lockhart. She moves from club to club, targeting married men, destroying families, then disappearing when things get messy. If we don't do something, she'll just move on and do it again." Colleen studied Michelle with renewed interest. You're proposing some sort of collaboration? I've contacted the other wives. We're meeting tomorrow. Michelle hadn't meant to say this. The meeting wasn't until the weekend. But something about Colleen's composure made her want to impress this woman, to show she wasn't just reacting emotionally. Fascinating. Colleen picked up the photo again. "You know, in 23 years of my husband's affairs, not one of the other women ever reached out to me. Not for solidarity, not for revenge, not even to gloat." She set the picture down. "I'll attend your meeting." As they finished their lunch, Colleen asked practical questions about the evidence Liam had gathered, about the pattern of Natasha's behavior, about the other men involved. Her analytical approach helped Michelle organize her own thoughts, transforming raw pain into structured understanding. "One last question," Colleen said as they prepared to leave. "Does your husband know that you know?" Michelle shook her head. "I'm still figuring out what to do. Part of me wants to confront him immediately, but another part wants to make him suffer a bit first," Colleen finished for her. She nodded approvingly. "Smart girl. Don't tip your hand too soon. Men like our husbands. They think they're so clever, so discreet. Let them believe that." a while longer. As Michelle drove back to her shop, she realized she had expected sisterhood, tears, shared outrage from Colleen. Instead, she had found something more valuable, a mentor in navigating this landscape of betrayal, someone who had turned personal pain into clear-eyed strategy. That night, when Drew called to say he would be working late again, Michelle replied with convincing disappointment, telling him she had made his favorite dinner and would keep a plate warm. After hanging up, she texted Liam, "Following him again tonight?" "Yes," came the reply. "Same destination as before." "I'm sorry, Michelle." She wasn't surprised. In fact, she had counted on it. While Drew was occupied with Natasha, Michelle was busy making calls, gathering the other wives for what would become their first strategy session. By the time Drew returned home at 11, Michelle was in bed with a novel she wasn't really reading. He kissed her cheek, murmuring apologies about work. She smiled softly, played her part perfectly, and watched him disappear into the shower. "Take your time," she whispered to the closed bathroom door. "I'm taking mine." The meeting place was Colleen Lynch's elegantly appointed lake house, 30 miles from the Oakwood Country Club, neutral territory where none of their husbands would accidentally spot their cars. Michelle arrived first, carrying a small notebook and the file Liam had prepared, containing photographs and timeline evidence of Natasha Lockhart's methodical approach to seduction. Colleen greeted her with 2 glasses of wine already poured. "Liquid courage," she explained, handing one to Michelle. "The others will need it more than we do." By noon, the lakeside sunroom contained 5 women, seated in a loose circle on Colleen's cream-colored furniture. Besides Michelle and Colleen, there was Vanessa Harrington, wife of the neurosurgeon, Diane Miller, married to one of the executives, and Rachel Carson, whose husband ran a successful real estate development company. All were well-dressed, attractive women who had built lives around their husband's success. All were discovering that those lives rested on quicksand. "Thank you for coming," Michelle began, acutely aware of the surreal nature of this gathering. "I know this is unusual." "Unusual doesn't begin to cover it," Vanessa said, her fingers nervously twisting her diamond wedding band. At 42, she had the polished appearance of a doctor's wife, perfect makeup hiding the dark circles under her eyes. "Your investigator friend showed me pictures of my husband with her, but I still don't understand why we're all here together. Isn't this something each of us should handle privately?" Colleen, who had positioned herself slightly apart from the group, a queen holding court, spoke up. "Because this isn't a random occurrence. This woman, Natasha Lockhart, targets married men systematically. She's done it before, at other clubs." Michelle nodded, opening the file on the coffee table. "She has a pattern. She chooses men of a certain status, offers private tennis lessons, gradually increases physical contact during coaching, creates artificial situations for extra time together, and eventually begins the affair. She maintains multiple relationships simultaneously, carefully scheduling each man so they never encounter each other. Like a business operation," Rachel observed quietly. The youngest of the group at 34, she twisted a strand of blonde hair around her finger. "A very efficient one." "Exactly," Michelle said. "And when things get complicated, when wives become suspicious, or the men want more than she's willing to give, she moves on to another club in another town and starts over." She spread out several employment records Liam had obtained. 6 clubs in 4 years. "So, what are we supposed to do with this information?" Diane asked. Her voice had a hard edge, suggesting she was moving directly from shock to anger. "Confront our husbands? Divorce them? What? That's a personal decision," Michelle replied carefully. "I'm not here to tell anyone what to do about their marriage. I'm here because I think we all deserve to know the truth, and because I think we might be able to help each other." "Help how?" Vanessa asked. Colleen set her wine glass down with deliberate precision. "By making sure Natasha Lockhart can't simply disappear and do this again to other women." The room fell silent as the implications sank in. "Are you suggesting—" Rachel began. Justice, Colleen stated simply. Not revenge. Justice. There's a difference. Over the next hour, the women shared their stories. Vanessa had suspected something was wrong when her husband started coming home with unexplained charges for club services on their joint credit card. Diane had noticed her husband's sudden interest in tennis, despite a long-standing knee problem. Rachel had found a receipt for an expensive bracelet she'd never received. Michelle listened, recognizing her own experience in theirs. The gradual accumulation of small inconsistencies that she had brushed aside until they became impossible to ignore. "What about your husband?" Rachel asked her eventually. Michelle took a sip of wine before answering. Drew started acting differently about 2 months ago, showering immediately when he got home, hiding his phone, staying late at work. She swallowed hard. "I saw a text notification from Tennis Pro that said, 'Can't wait to see you again.' That's when I hired Liam." "And you haven't confronted Drew yet?" Diane asked. Michelle shook her head. "No, I'm still processing. Every night he comes home with some excuse, and I pretend to believe him. I keep thinking I should feel angrier, but mostly I just feel sad and foolish." "You're not foolish," Colleen said sharply. "None of you are. These men, our husbands, they're the fools. And so is she, thinking she can simply move on when things get messy." "So what do we do?" Vanessa asked, looking around the room. Michelle pulled out a small notebook. "I have some ideas, but first, I want to understand more about how she operates. Each of your husbands is at a different stage in her process. If we compare notes, we might see the full picture." The women began reconstructing Natasha's methodology, piecing together a timeline from their collective experience. It was, as Rachel had observed, remarkably businesslike. First came the innocent introduction at the club, usually when a member was alone at the bar or restaurant. Then the subtle flirtation disguised as professional interest, the offer of private lessons at special times, the gradual escalation of physical contact during coaching, the manufactured emergencies that required additional meetings outside the club. "She's even using the same lines on them," Diane noted with disgust, reading from text messages her husband had failed to delete. "No one understands you like I do. Your wife is so lucky. But does she appreciate you?" "It's a script," Michelle realized. "She's following a script." As the afternoon progressed, the initial awkwardness between the women gave way to a strange camaraderie. Their shared humiliation created an instant bond, their collective intelligence focusing on understanding their common enemy. "We need more information," Michelle said finally. "Liam has discovered a lot, but there are still gaps." "What kind of information?" Rachel asked. "Everything. Her background, her finances, her previous targets at other clubs. The more we know about her, the better." Colleen had been quiet for some time, observing the younger women with thoughtful eyes. Now she spoke up. "I have resources that might help. My husband may be a philanderer, but he's a well-connected one. I can make some discreet inquiries. I can look into her digital footprint," offered Rachel, who ran her own social media consulting business alongside supporting her husband's real estate company. "Social media, online presence, dating profiles. If it's out there, I can find it." One by one, they assigned themselves tasks, using their particular skills and connections to build a comprehensive dossier on Natasha Lockhart. They exchanged phone numbers, created a secure messaging group, and agreed to meet again in 1 week with their findings. As the meeting broke up, Vanessa pulled Michelle aside. "Are you really okay? Living with him? Pretending you don't know?" Michelle considered the question. "No, I'm not okay, but I'm functioning, and right now, that's enough." Driving home, Michelle felt a strange sense of purpose replacing the hollow ache that had consumed her since seeing those photographs. The other women's stories had contextualized her pain, showing her that what had happened wasn't about her personal failure as a wife. It was about a predator who had perfected her technique. That evening, Drew called to say he would be home for dinner, a rare occurrence lately. Michelle prepared his favorite meal, set the table with their wedding china, and even put on the perfume he had given her for their last anniversary. The performance was exhausting but necessary. Over dinner, Drew talked about work, office politics, his latest projects, all carefully crafted lies to explain his absences. Michelle nodded at appropriate intervals, asked the right questions, laughed at his jokes, all while thinking, "I know where you really were yesterday. I know who you were with." "You seem distant," Drew observed as they cleared the dishes. "Everything okay at the shop?" "Just tired," Michelle replied, almost appreciating the irony. He was concerned about her seeming distant. "A big wedding order this weekend." Drew put his arms around her, and it took every ounce of self-control not to stiffen at his touch. "You work too hard. You should take some time off. Maybe we could go away for a weekend." "That sounds nice," she lied, wondering if he would have taken Natasha on this hypothetical getaway instead. Later, lying awake beside him, Michelle checked her phone. The women's group chat had exploded with activity. Rachel had already uncovered 3 different social media accounts under variations of Natasha's name. Diane had spoken with a friend at another country club where Natasha had previously worked and confirmed the same pattern of behavior. Colleen had made appointments with 2 separate attorneys to understand their legal options. They were moving quickly, efficiently, their collective shock transforming into focused action. It was, Michelle reflected, probably not what Natasha expected from the wives she so carefully avoided. Not passive victims, but a network forming in the shadows. The next day, Michelle met Liam for an update over coffee. "You look better than I expected," he observed, studying her face with professional assessment. "More determined." "I met the other wives," Michelle explained. "It helped, somehow, to not be alone in this." Liam raised an eyebrow. "That's unusual. Most clients prefer to keep things private. This isn't a usual situation." Michelle leaned forward. "We need more information, Liam, about Natasha, about her previous clubs, previous targets." "I'm already working on it," he assured her. "But, Michelle, what exactly are you planning to do with all this information?" She considered her answer carefully. "Something that will ensure she can't simply move on and do this again." "That sounds dangerously close to revenge," Liam warned. "No," Michelle corrected him. "Justice. There's a difference." Over the next 2 weeks, Michelle maintained her double life. Dutiful wife in the evenings, determined investigator during the days. She and the other women met twice more at Colleen's lake house, each bringing new pieces to the puzzle of Natasha Lockhart's operation. Rachel discovered that Natasha had briefly worked as an escort before reinventing herself as a tennis instructor, explaining her calculated approach to extracting maximum benefit from relationships with wealthy men. Diane found a pattern of expensive gifts, jewelry, designer handbags, even a car, from previous targets. Colleen's attorney contacts confirmed that while distasteful, Natasha's behavior wasn't technically illegal. She made no explicit exchanges of money for companionship, carefully staying on the right side of that particular line. All the while, Michelle watched Drew continue his deception, his excuses becoming increasingly elaborate as Natasha demanded more of his time. Tennis lessons 3 times a week, weekend training sessions, late-night strategy discussions. "I had no idea tennis was so complicated," Michelle remarked one evening, unable to resist the small jab. Drew didn't even notice the sarcasm. "It's all about precision and timing," he explained earnestly. "Natasha says my backhand is really improving." At least he wasn't hiding her name anymore. Small mercies. During their 3rd meeting, the women finalized their plan. It was Colleen, with her decades of navigating social warfare in country club circles, who proposed the most elegant solution. "Exposure," she said simply. "Complete, public, undeniable exposure. Not just of Natasha, but of the whole operation. Not for revenge, but to ensure she can't simply disappear and start over. Her power lies in secrecy and discretion. Remove that, and she has nothing." They chose the annual Oakwood Charity Tennis Tournament as their moment. an event where members, families, and the public would gather to watch exhibition matches and raise money for local children's charities. Natasha was scheduled to play an exhibition match as one of the club's professional instructors. "It's perfect," Rachel said. "All our husbands will be there. The club board will be there. Potential future victims will be there. And we'll be there too," Michelle added quietly. "All of us." The morning of the Oakwood charity tennis tournament dawned bright and clear, as if nature itself approved of their plan. Michelle stood in front of her closet, deliberating over her outfit with an intensity that surprised her. In the past 3 weeks, such decisions had seemed trivial compared to the collapse of her marriage. But today, appearance mattered. Today was about reclaiming power. She settled on a sundress in a deep teal that complemented her eyes, adding pearl earrings and a matching necklace, Drew's gift from their 5th anniversary, before the lies began. The irony felt appropriate. "You're going to the tournament?" Drew asked, surprise evident in his voice when she emerged from their bedroom fully dressed. He was already in tennis whites, his racket bag by the door. "I thought you had that big order for the Peterson wedding." "I rescheduled," Michelle replied calmly. "I haven't seen you play yet. Thought it was time to support my husband's new hobby." A flicker of unease crossed Drew's face. "It's just a charity exhibition. Nothing serious." "Oh, I wouldn't miss it," Michelle assured him, maintaining her pleasant smile. "I've heard so much about your instructor, Natasha. I'm looking forward to meeting her." Drew's hand froze on his coffee mug. "She's playing in the exhibition match, not teaching today. Even better. I'll get to see her in action." Michelle picked up her purse, keys already in hand. "I'll drive separately. I have some errands to run first, but I'll be there before your match." She left before he could respond, feeling a small, cold satisfaction at the confusion and alarm she'd left in her wake. For weeks, she had been the one off balance, stumbling through a marriage that had become a minefield of lies. Today, the roles were reversed. Michelle drove to Colleen's house, where the 5 women had agreed to meet before heading to the tournament together. A united front. Rachel was already there, helping Colleen arrange a light breakfast on her patio. The 2 women had formed an unlikely friendship, Rachel with her social media savvy, and Colleen with her old-school social intelligence, making an effective team. Diane arrived next, her usual corporate armor softened by a casual summer dress. Vanessa came last, visibly nervous, but determined. "Everyone clear on the plan?" Michelle asked once they had settled with coffee and croissants. Colleen nodded. "I've confirmed with my contact at the club. The technical arrangements are in place." He didn't elaborate on what technical arrangements entailed or how she had managed to secure them. Some things were better left unspecified. "I have the full dossier," Rachel added, patting her designer tote bag. "Everything we've gathered over the past 3 weeks. Photos, text messages, employment history, financial transactions, testimony from her previous clubs. All organized and ready." "What if it doesn't work?" Vanessa asked, voicing the fear they all shared. "What if we go through with this and nothing changes? Our husbands are still with her. Our marriages are still damaged." "This isn't about saving our marriages," Colleen said gently. "That's a separate decision each of us will make on our own. This is about making sure Natasha Lockhart can't simply disappear and start over somewhere else when things get complicated here. And about showing our husbands that we aren't passive victims," Diane added, a steely edge to her voice, "that we have agency in this situation too." Michelle looked around at these women who had become her unexpected allies. 3 weeks ago, they had been strangers connected only by the humiliating discovery of their husband's infidelity. Now, they operated as a unit, each contributing their particular strengths to a common goal. "Whatever happens today," Michelle said, raising her coffee cup in a toast, "we face it together." "Together," the others echoed, clinking their cups against hers. They arrived at the Oakwood Country Club at 11, when the tournament was already in full swing. The grounds were immaculate, with pristine tennis courts surrounded by manicured lawns, where members and guests mingled in summer finery. A large scoreboard displayed the day's matches, with Natasha's exhibition game scheduled for 2 o'clock, the prime afternoon slot. Michelle spotted Drew immediately, standing near the practice courts with several other men. Her stomach clenched when she saw Natasha beside them, radiant in a white tennis dress that showcased her athletic figure. She was demonstrating a serve, her movements graceful and precise, while the men watched with undisguised admiration. Colleen touched Michelle's arm. "Remember the plan. No confrontations until everything is in place." Michelle nodded, forcing herself to look away from the tableau that so perfectly illustrated what they were up against. Natasha wasn't just beautiful. She was skilled, confident, and completely at ease in this environment. No wonder their husbands had been such easy targets. The women separated, each moving to their assigned position. Rachel headed for the club's media room, where the tournament's live stream was being managed. Diane positioned herself near the club's board members, ready to distribute copies of the dossier at the critical moment. Vanessa circulated among the spectators, ensuring maximum attendance for the exhibition match. Colleen went to confirm final arrangements with her mysterious technical contact. Michelle was left to do the most difficult task: maintain normalcy while everything was prepared. She approached Drew and his group, smiling as if her world hadn't shattered 3 weeks ago. "There you are," she called out, waving as Drew turned toward her voice. The alarm on his face was quickly masked with an overly bright smile. "Michelle, you made it!" He moved to intercept her before she reached the group, but she was too quick. "Aren't you going to introduce me to everyone?" she asked innocently, looking directly at Natasha. Drew cleared his throat. "Of course. This is Jason Miller, Tom Harrington, Richard Lynch. You remember meeting his wife at that charity gala last year." He gestured to each man in turn, all of whom nodded politely, though Richard Lynch's eyes darted away uncomfortably. Drew hesitated before finally adding, "And this is Natasha Lockhart, the club's professional instructor." "The famous tennis pro," Michelle said, extending her hand. "I've heard so much about you." Natasha smiled, perfect white teeth against sun-kissed skin. Up close, Michelle could see why the men were entranced. She radiated confidence and sensuality in equal measure. "All good things, I hope." "Oh, definitely," Michelle replied, holding the handshake a beat longer than necessary. Drew has become quite enthusiastic about his backhand. A flicker of uncertainty passed behind Natasha's eyes, the first crack in her polished facade. She glanced at Drew, who was visibly sweating despite the mild temperature. "Well, I should warm up before my match," Natasha said, smoothly extracting herself. "Lovely to meet you, Mrs. Gray." "Michelle, please," she insisted. "I'm sure we'll be seeing much more of each other." As Natasha walked away, Michelle turned to the group of men. "Actually, I've met most of your wives. Diane, Vanessa, Colleen. They're all here today." She watched with grim satisfaction as the men exchanged alarmed glances. In fact, there they are now. She waved toward Diane and Colleen, who were walking purposefully toward the main courts. The men mumbled excuses and dispersed quickly, each seeking out his wife before introductions could be made. Drew remained, looking increasingly uneasy. "Michelle, what's going on?" "Going on?" She raised her eyebrows in feigned confusion. "It's a charity tournament. I'm supporting my husband's new interest. Isn't that what a good wife does?" Before he could respond, an announcement came over the club's PA system. "Ladies and gentlemen, the exhibition match featuring our professional instructor Natasha Lockhart will begin in 30 minutes on center court. Please take your seats." "We should find good seats," Michelle said brightly. "I want to see her in action." Drew's phone buzzed in his pocket. He checked it quickly, then stiffened. "I need to make a call. Club business. I'll meet you at the court." Michelle watched him hurry away, phone pressed to his ear. She could guess who was calling, Natasha, warning him that something felt off, that his wife seemed to know more than she should. Good. Let them squirm. At precisely 1:45, 15 minutes before the exhibition match, Michelle received a text from Rachel. "Everything ready. heading to center court now. Similar confirmations came from Diane and Vanessa. Colleen simply texted, "It's time." Michelle made her way to center court, where hundreds of spectators were gathering for the showcase match. She spotted Drew in the third row, saving her a seat. His face was pale, his leg bouncing nervously. When he saw her, he forced a smile that didn't reach his eyes. "Everything okay?" she asked as she sat beside him. "You seem tense." "Fine," he replied shortly. "Just club politics. Nothing important." On the court, Natasha was warming up, hitting practice serves with fluid, powerful movements. Michelle had to admit she was impressive. Athletic, focused, in complete control of her environment, or so she thought. At exactly 2 o'clock, the club president approached the microphone to introduce the exhibition match. He was halfway through his speech when the large display screen behind him, intended to show close-ups of the match for spectators in the back rows, suddenly flickered and changed. Instead of the club logo, it showed a photograph of Natasha leaving a restaurant with Drew, his hand on the small of her back. The image was unmistakable, the timestamp clearly visible. A murmur rippled through the crowd. The club president turned, confused by the audience's reaction, then saw the screen. He faltered mid-sentence, clearly unsure how to proceed. Before anyone could react further, the image changed to another photograph. Natasha with Dr. Harrington this time, entering her apartment building. Then another, and another, cycling through evidence of her relationships with all 5 married men. Text messages appeared, then financial records showing expensive gifts, then testimonials from employees at previous clubs describing the same pattern of behavior. The crowd's murmur became a buzz of shocked conversations. People pointed, whispered, pulled out phones to capture the unexpected spectacle. On the court, Natasha stood frozen, racket hanging limply at her side, as she watched her carefully constructed world collapse in high definition. Drew grabbed Michelle's arm. "What the hell is this?" he hissed, his face ashen. "What have you done?" "Me?" Michelle met his gaze steadily. "I'm just watching the show, like everyone else." On the screen, a new section began. A methodically organized presentation of Natasha's business model, showing how she selected targets, established relationships, maintained multiple affairs simultaneously, and moved on when complications arose. It was clinical, detailed, and devastating in its thoroughness. The club president was frantically signaling to the technical staff, but nothing changed. The presentation continued, apparently immune to their attempts to stop it. In the ensuing chaos, Michelle noticed something unexpected. Colleen Lynch had risen from her seat and was walking purposefully toward the court. Her face, usually composed, showed a rage that had clearly been building for decades. In her hand was an expensive designer handbag, gripped like a weapon. What happened next would be discussed in hushed tones at country clubs across 3 counties for years to come. Colleen, the perfectly coiffed, unfailingly dignified wife of Richard Lynch, climbed over the low barrier separating spectators from the court and marched directly toward Natasha Lockhart. 23 years, she announced loudly, her voice carrying across the suddenly silent court. 23 years of my life with a man who couldn't keep his pants zipped. You're not the first, but by God, you're going to be the last. And then, to everyone's astonishment, 60-year-old Colleen Lynch swung her $5,000 handbag directly at Natasha Lockhart's head. Natasha dodged, but not quickly enough. The bag caught her shoulder, sending her stumbling backward. "You crazy bitch," she gasped. But Colleen was already swinging again. "This is for my marriage," Colleen shouted, landing another blow. "This is for every night I sat alone while he was with women like you." Another swing, another hit. "And this is for every wife who was too afraid to do what I'm doing right now." Security personnel rushed forward, but they seemed reluctant to physically restrain the elegant older woman, now relentlessly pursuing the tennis pro around the court. Natasha kept retreating, trying to maintain dignity, while literally running from Colleen's fury. In the tumult, Michelle felt a strange sense of detachment, as if watching a movie rather than experiencing real life. Beside her, Drew sat rigid with shock, witnessing the public destruction of his affair, and the woman at its center. "We should go," he said finally, tugging at Michelle's arm. This is insane." "No," Michelle replied quietly. "We're staying. You need to see this. All of it." On the court, security had finally managed to separate Colleen from Natasha, though not before Colleen's designer shoe, which had come off during the chase, was thrown with surprising accuracy, striking Natasha squarely in the back. "You'll regret this," Natasha shouted, her perfect composure finally shattered. "All of you! You have no idea who you're dealing with." From different points around the court, Michelle saw the other wives standing, forming a loose circle around the scene. Diane, with her phone recording everything. Rachel distributing copies of the dossier to stunned club board members. Vanessa standing tall despite the tears streaming down her face. The tournament director finally managed to restore some semblance of order, announcing that the exhibition match was cancelled and asking spectators to please exit in an orderly fashion. No one moved. This was far more entertaining than any tennis match could have been. Drew turned to Michelle, his expression a mixture of anger and fear. "You planned this, all of you." "Yes," she admitted. "We did." "Why? To humiliate me publicly? To destroy my reputation?" Michelle looked at him. This man she had loved for 11 years, whose betrayal had cut deeper than she'd imagined possible. "No, Drew, not everything is about you." The aftermath of what quickly became known as the Oakwood incident unfolded with the devastating precision of dominoes falling. Within hours, videos of Colleen Lynch pursuing Natasha Lockhart across center court with her designer handbag had gone viral, spreading from private country club circles to local news and finally to national gossip sites. By evening, Checkered Tennis Affair and Freichart Country Club chaos were trending, with edited clips showing Colleen's shoe sailing through the air in slow motion, set to dramatic music. But for Michelle, the public spectacle was merely the visible surface of a much deeper earthquake. The drive home from Oakwood had been conducted in complete silence, the 18 minutes stretching into an eternity as Drew stared straight ahead, his knuckles white on the steering wheel. When they finally reached their house, he had walked directly to the bar cart and poured himself 3 fingers of whiskey, downing it in one swallow before finally turning to face her. "How long have you known?" he asked, his voice hoarse. Michelle leaned against the kitchen counter, suddenly exhausted now that the adrenaline was fading. 3 weeks. I hired Liam Blackwell." "Liam? Your friend from college?" Drew's face contorted. "You've been spying on me for 3 weeks?" "Don't." Michelle held up her hand. "Don't you dare try to make this about my actions. You've been lying to me for months." Drew ran his hands through his hair, pacing the kitchen like a caged animal. "It wasn't what you think. It wasn't serious. Natasha and you and Richard Lynch and Tom Harrington and Jason Miller." Michelle's voice was flat. "I know exactly what it was, Drew. We all do now." He stopped pacing, the reality of the situation finally penetrating his shock. "My God. The firm. My clients saw that. Everyone saw that." He collapsed onto a kitchen chair, the full implications washing over him. "I'll be lucky if I'm not fired." "That's what you're worried about? Your job?" Michelle shook her head in disbelief. "What about our marriage? The life we built?" Drew looked up at her, and for a moment, Michelle saw a glimpse of the man she had married. Vulnerable, honest, his defenses down. "I don't know what to say, Michelle. I screwed up. I got caught up in something that felt exciting, different. She made me feel—" "Don't tell me how she made you feel," Michelle interrupted. "I don't want to hear it. What I want to know is why. Why wasn't our life enough? Why wasn't I enough?" "It wasn't about you," Drew said quickly. "You have to believe that. You were always enough. More than enough. I don't know. I got lost somehow." Michelle studied his face. The face she had woken up beside for 11 years. The face she had once believed she could read like a familiar book. Now, he was a stranger to her, and she to him. "I need you to leave," she said finally. Drew blinked, unprepared for this development. "Leave? You're kicking me out?" "Yes." Michelle's voice was steady despite the storm inside her. "I can't look at you right now. I can't sleep beside you. I need space to think, to process what's happened and what it means for us, for me. Where am I supposed to go?" There was a note of panic in his voice that might have moved her before today. "Your father's," she suggested, knowing Franklin Gray would be deeply disappointed in his son. "A hotel. Anywhere that isn't here. I've packed some of your things." She gestured to a suitcase in the hallway that she had prepared days ago, anticipating this moment. Drew stared at the suitcase, the reality of his situation finally sinking in. "How long?" "I don't know," Michelle answered honestly. "Maybe a few days, maybe longer. I don't have all the answers right now, Drew. I just know I need you to go." That had been 4 weeks ago. 4 weeks of living alone in their house, surrounded by memories that felt like they belonged to someone else's life. 4 weeks of running her flower shop, arranging bouquets for other people's celebrations and commemorations, while her own life hung suspended. 4 weeks of therapy sessions, support group meetings with the other wives, and long walks through the neighborhood trying to untangle her thoughts. Franklin Gray had indeed taken his son in, but not without consequences. Michelle had received a call from her father-in-law 2 days after Drew moved into his guest room. "I want you to know," Franklin had said, his voice gruff with emotion, "that I didn't raise him to behave this way. His mother would be heartbroken." "I know that, Franklin," Michelle had replied, touched by his support. "He's my son, and I love him," the older man continued, "but what he did to you was wrong, dishonorable. I've told him as much." That conversation had been the first crack in Michelle's numbness, allowing real grief to seep through. If even Drew's father couldn't defend his actions, the reality of her situation was undeniable. The other wives had followed different paths in the wake of the Oakwood incident. Diane had filed for divorce immediately, hiring the most aggressive attorney in the state and moving out of the family home into a sleek downtown apartment. Vanessa had enrolled herself and Tom in intensive couples therapy, determined to rebuild what they had lost. Rachel was taking time to decide, focusing on her social media business, which had unexpectedly boomed after her role in exposing Natasha became known. And Colleen, magnificent, surprising Colleen, had become something of a folk hero. Her attack on Natasha, with nothing but righteous fury and expensive accessories, had struck a chord with women everywhere. She'd received offers for book deals, television interviews, even a fashion line of statement handbags. She had declined them all, preferring to retreat to her lake house where she was reportedly contemplating a long-delayed divorce from Richard. As for Natasha Lockhart, she had disappeared from Oakwood the day after the tournament, leaving behind an apartment full of expensive gifts and a trail of destruction. According to Liam's sources, she had attempted to secure a position at a country club in a neighboring state, only to be rejected when the hiring manager recognized her from the viral videos. Her carefully constructed business model had collapsed completely, its success dependent on anonymity and discretion that no longer existed. On a warm Tuesday evening, exactly 1 month after the Oakwood incident, Michelle sat on her front porch with a glass of wine, watching the sunset paint the sky in shades of orange and pink. Her phone buzzed with a text from Drew. "Can we talk? In person?" She stared at the message for a long time before responding. "Coffee shop on Main. Tomorrow. Noon." They had communicated sporadically over the past month. Practical matters about bills, the house, mail that needed forwarding. This would be their first real conversation since she had asked him to leave. The coffee shop was neutral territory, public enough to discourage drama, but quiet enough for a private conversation. Michelle arrived early, selecting a table in the corner where they wouldn't be easily overheard. When Drew walked in, she was struck by how different he looked. thinner with dark circles under his eyes, his usual confident stride replaced by hesitancy. "Thank you for meeting me," he said, sitting across from her. "You look good." "Thank you," she replied simply. She wouldn't return the compliment dishonestly. After ordering coffees, they sat in awkward silence until Drew finally spoke. "I've been in therapy, individual sessions 3 times a week. I wanted you to know that." Michelle nodded. "That's good. I've been trying to understand why I did what I did." He stared into his coffee cup as if it might contain answers. "It wasn't about you. It was never about you not being enough. It was about me, my insecurities, my fear of getting older, my need for validation." "I know that," Michelle said, surprising herself with the realization that she did know. "It doesn't make it hurt any less." Drew nodded. "I've lost my job. The firm asked me to resign. Too much negative publicity after the tournament. They gave me a decent severance package. But," he shrugged, "I'm interviewing at smaller firms, starting over." Michelle felt a pang of sympathy despite herself. Drew's career had been central to his identity. Losing it would be devastating to him. "I'm sorry to hear that," she said, and meant it. Even now, she didn't want him to suffer unnecessarily. Her anger was tempered by the genuine connection they had shared for so many years. "I didn't come here to talk about my job," Drew said, finally meeting her eyes directly. "I came to tell you that I'm sorry, truly sorry. Not just for the affair, but for taking you for granted, for forgetting what we had built together, for risking everything that mattered for something so empty." Michelle studied him, searching for signs of manipulation or insincerity. She found none, just a broken man facing the consequences of his choices. "What do you want from me, Drew?" she asked finally. He took a deep breath. "A second chance. Not immediately. I know I haven't earned that yet, but the possibility of one, someday. I love you, Michelle. I never stopped, even when I was making the worst mistake of my life." The words hung between them, charged with history and pain, and the faint, flickering possibility of redemption. Michelle had rehearsed this moment in her mind 100 times over the past month, imagining what she would say if Drew asked for reconciliation. Now that the moment had arrived, she found her prepared speech inadequate. "I loved you too," she said softly, "with everything I had. That's what made your betrayal so devastating. It wasn't just the affair. It was the lies, the secret life, the way you looked me in the eye day after day and chose deception." Drew winced, but didn't interrupt. "The hardest part was realizing that while I thought we were partners, facing life together, you were somewhere else entirely. That disconnect can't be fixed with apologies, or therapy, or time apart." Michelle's voice remained steady, though her heart raced. "The trust is gone, Drew. And without trust, there's no foundation to rebuild on." He reached across the table, his hand stopping short of touching hers. "Trust can be rebuilt. People make terrible mistakes and find their way back. It happens all the time." "It does," Michelle acknowledged, "but not for us." Drew's face crumpled. "Please don't say that. We had 11 years, and they weren't wasted," Michelle interjected gently. "They were real and valuable and part of who I am. I'll always cherish what we had. But it's over." A single tear escaped Drew's careful composure, tracking down his cheek. "Just like that? No chance at all?" Michelle shook her head. "Not just like that. After weeks of soul-searching, therapy, and honest evaluation of what I need in my life going forward, I deserve someone who chooses me every day, not just when it's convenient or after they've been caught." Drew wiped his face, struggling to maintain dignity. "What happens now?" "I've contacted a realtor. The house is going on the market next week," Michelle said. "Once it sells, we'll split the proceeds as outlined in our prenup. I've already found a smaller place closer to my shop." "You've planned everything," Drew observed, a note of bitter resignation in his voice. "I had to. You left me to deal with the aftermath while you were busy with Natasha." Drew flinched at her directness. "I deserve that. All of it." They finished their coffees in silence, the finality of their conversation settling around them like a weight. As they prepared to leave, Drew asked, "Do you think you'll ever forgive me?" Michelle considered the question carefully. "I think I already have, in some ways. Forgiveness isn't about erasing what happened or pretending it didn't hurt. It's about freeing myself from the burden of anger. So yes, I forgive you, Drew. For my sake, not yours. Thank you for that, at least." He stood awkwardly, clearly wanting to embrace her but respecting the boundary she had established. "You're extraordinary, you know. You always were." "Goodbye, Drew," she said simply, turning to leave. Outside the coffee shop, Michelle took a deep breath of fresh air, feeling lighter than she had in weeks. The conversation had provided the closure she needed, not just from Drew, but from the version of herself who had defined her life through their marriage. As she walked toward her car, her phone rang. It was Colleen. "How did it go?" the older woman asked without preamble. "It's done," Michelle replied. "Clean break. The house goes on the market next week." "Good for you," Colleen said approvingly. "The others are coming to the lake house for dinner tonight. Rachel's bringing wine, Diane's handling dessert, and Vanessa's making her famous lasagna. You should join us." Michelle smiled. The unexpected sisterhood that had formed from shared pain had become one of the most supportive relationships in her life. "I'll bring flowers." "Of course you will," Colleen chuckled. 7 o'clock. "And Michelle, you did the right thing. Some bridges can't be rebuilt once they're burned. Better to find new paths forward." That evening, as Michelle arranged roses, lilies, and wildflowers in Colleen's crystal vases, she looked around at the women who had become her unlikely family. Rachel was showing Diane how to optimize her dating profile on her phone. Vanessa was describing her latest therapy breakthrough. Colleen was pouring wine with the same elegant precision she had shown when swinging her handbag at Natasha Lockhart. They had all been changed by betrayal, but not defined by it. Each had found her own way forward, some rebuilding, others starting fresh, all supporting each other through the process. Later, as they sat around Colleen's dining table, glasses raised in a toast, Michelle felt a profound sense of gratitude beneath her lingering sadness. She had lost her husband but found her strength. She had faced her worst fear and survived it. She had discovered that endings, even painful ones, could lead to unexpected new beginnings. "To unlikely friendships," Colleen proposed, raising her glass. "To second acts," Diane added, her eyes bright with anticipation of her new life. "To learning who we really are," Vanessa said softly. "To standing up for ourselves," Rachel chimed in. Michelle lifted her glass, meeting each woman's eyes in turn. "To the truth, however painful, however liberating, to facing it together." As their glasses clinked in the warm light of Colleen's dining room, Michelle knew that while her marriage had ended, her story was far from over. The future stretched before her, uncertain, challenging, but undeniably hers to shape. And for the first time since seeing that fateful text on Drew's phone, she felt not just resignation or determination, but genuine hope. Outside, the sunset painted the lake in gold and crimson, a fitting backdrop to the end of one chapter and the promising beginning of another. Michelle Gray, florist, friend, survivor, stood at the threshold of her new life, ready at last to step forward. If you enjoyed the story, leave a like and subscribe to the channel. And drop a comment below. What city are you watching from? And if your heart tells you to, feel free to leave me a tip on Buy Me a Coffee. Just check the first pinned comment. Thanks for keeping me company and for the coffee, and I'll see you in the next story.